Welcome back to the Classroom Management Mini-Course, 3 Days to Regain Control. I'm Linda Cardamus with Teach for the Heart, and if you missed the first video, make sure you go back and watch that one first. If you remember, we developed a plan to regain attention, to eliminate distractions, and then to do a classroom shakeup to kind of force a reset and be able to make changes mid-year. Today, we're going to talk about how to execute that classroom shakeup, teach new procedures, and ensure that things actually change. Because the worst thing we can do is have a shakeup and then not follow through and everything end up right back where we were the next day. So let's talk about what you need to do if you're going to pull off this classroom shakeup. Well, the first thing you need to do is you need to develop the right demeanor as a teacher. So before you even execute your classroom shakeup, you need to rethink, do I have the right demeanor as a teacher? First of all, in there, you need to be viewing yourself not as a friend, but as a mentor. And I think sometimes we have good intentions. We think, oh, I want to be their friend because I want to be the one that they come to for advice and I want to be able to help them. But a friend-to-friend relationship friends don't hold friends accountable. Friends don't assign homework. Friends definitely don't give consequences. It doesn't work when you're trying to develop this relationship in the classroom and develop the right classroom culture. If you view yourself as a friend, you're going to find yourself at odds and you're probably not going to be making the best decisions. So instead of viewing yourself as a friend, view yourself as a mentor. So a mentor absolutely cares about their mentee, right? They are there for them. They are giving them advice. They have a very personal relationship in many cases, and they're a meaningful part of their life and create a big impact. But they're not on the same level, right? There's a clear mentor and mentee. So if you've been thinking of yourself as a friend, start viewing yourself instead as their mentor. And that mental shift will work itself out in your actions and it'll make a big difference. So be a friend, don't be a friend, be a mentor. Number 2, don't focus on being liked. Instead, work to be respected. So if we all want our students to like us, that is just natural. But if you focus on that, if you really try to get them to like you, you are not going to make very good decisions in your classroom. Things are not going to go well. It's not going to be a good learning environment. And to be honest, as a result, they're probably not going to like or respect you in the end. So what you want to do instead is focus on being respected and on earning their respect by being the kind of person that is deserving of respect and then creating a classroom environment that fosters that respect. So once again, this is a mental shift that might not seem like it makes a difference, but it absolutely does. So if you've been kind of worrying and focusing on, do my students like me? You need to make that mental shift. And every time that thought comes up, think instead, no, I really want them to respect me and make the decision that would help them respect you, not necessarily the one that would get them to like you. Interestingly enough, I find too that if your students do respect you, they'll often come back later and say, I really liked your class, or I really liked you as a teacher. So it ends up working way better in the long run. Third, you want to be both kind and firm. Sometimes we see these as odds with each other. We think I can either be nice or I can be strict. So I got to choose to be the nice, kind teacher or the firm, strict teacher. But the reality is we absolutely must be both simultaneously. We should absolutely be nice and personable and understanding and fun to be around. If we're not going to have a very good relationship with our students. But at the same exact time that you are kind and nice and personable, you absolutely need to have high expectations. You need to deal with issues as they come up, and you cannot be a pushover in your classroom. So it is critical to be both kind and firm at the exact same time. So if these have been kind of mindset shifts for you, spend some time thinking about them and developing that correct demeanor. Once we have our demeanor ready, we are ready for the next phase, which is to actually conduct our classroom shakeup. We talked about this in yesterday's video, so if you missed it, go back and check it. But remember, our goal is to force a bit of a reset and to show our students that things are going to be different. We want to use actions, not just words, to show them that, to get their attention and say things are not going to be the same as they used to be. So let's talk about how do you actually do the shakeup. Remember, we said you might take something out of the room, you might not let students in, you might skip a part of your routine. Hopefully you planned that yesterday. Okay, but what happens next? So in the example we gave yesterday, we said maybe they've been really rowdy coming into class. And so we said, okay, we're going to shut the door and stand outside. And when they come in, we're not going to let them in the room. So what happens? Well, the students are coming in, Mrs. Cardamus, why is the door shut? Mrs. Cardamus, is something going on? Why can't we go in there? You want to let this kind of go on for a minute. This is intentional chaos. And you want them to be asking what's going on. You want to have their attention. When you have their attention, you can say, class, and you're going to talk to them. Now, this is not the time to lecture. This is not the time to tell them all the things they've been doing horribly. You want to be very calm and matter of fact and explain to them what will be different. So, for example, you might say, class, we have had trouble coming into the classroom and we need to be doing this differently from now on. So from now on, what I expect from you is that when I open this door in a few minutes, you are not going to run into the classroom. You are going to walk calmly straight to your desk. You're not going to talk to a friend. You're going to go to your desk first. You're going to put away your books, and then you outline the 3 or 4 things that you want them to do when they go into the classroom. So that's kind of how that conversation goes. You want to explain it very clearly to them. Now it's time to actually teach the new procedure to them. So I'm going to talk to you right now about how to teach the new procedure. This works right now when you're doing your classroom shakeup, but you can also use this for any procedure that you want to teach. I remember yesterday we talked about call and response sayings and how they only work if you teach the procedure correctly. This is the same thing you want to use for that as well. So you do your shakeup. Now it's time to teach the procedure. Let's walk through the steps of that. There's 4 steps to teaching a procedure. Number 1 is to explain it. Sometimes we think we can just say, come into the room correctly, and students know what that means. They may or may not. So you need to be very clear with them. Did you notice the example I just gave? That's what I was doing. I was explaining. You don't walk, you don't run, you walk. You go right to your seat. You get out, your homework or whatever it is. You want to tell them exactly what you expect very clearly. In some cases, you might even take time and model it. Have different students model what it does look like, what it doesn't look like. It depends on the situation, but you might even spend some time modeling it with the students. So step 1, you explain the procedure. Step 2, you practice the procedure. So in this example of our classroom shakeup, you would say, okay, now we're actually going to do this. I'm about to open the door. We're all going to come into the classroom just like I described it to you. And you open your door and students actually do it. I never teach a procedure until it's time to actually do it because the practice is such an important part of the procedure. So in this example, students are coming in, they're going to their seats. That is not enough though. If you just do that, it might help a little bit, but the magic has not happened yet. Step 3 is to correct anything that went wrong. So as your students, you just had your shakeup, you just explained everything, and students are coming in, you're going to have a couple kids that don't do what they're supposed to. Maya ran into the room, Olivia went and talked to her friend. So you got to point that out. Oh, Maya, you just ran into the room. Remember, we need to walk. And Olivia, you got to go straight to your desk. So correct whatever went wrong. Be minute. Be very diligent in even the smallest things and point out everything that should be different. And then number 4, this is where the magic happens. And sometimes we hesitate to do this, but if you do, it will make a huge difference. Number 4, ask students to redo the parts that went incorrectly. Now, this may mean if the majority of the class didn't do it right, you might have the whole class redo it. But most of the time, you only have a couple students redo what went wrong. It depends on the situation. But in this case, I would just say, Maya, you need to go back out in the hall and come in correctly. And Olivia, I want you to try again too and go straight to your desk. By having them redo it, you're doing a few things. 1, you're showing them we're actually going to do it right. And it means when I say something, it means something, and we're actually going to do it right. And number 2, it helps them relearn it. This is a training process. They have bad habits, and they need to be corrected. And so it's going to take a little bit of time. So having them actually go back and redo it helps to reinforce the correct procedure. Now, typically when you're teaching a new procedure, there shouldn't be any consequences. You're not like giving students detentions because they're not doing it right. You're simply having them correct and redo. The exception to that, however, is if you have a student that's purposefully not listening and you ask them to redo it and they're continuing to do the same thing over and over again, or you can tell that they're purposefully not doing what they're supposed to. Well, that's moved from, relearning to a discipline issue. So at that point, you do need to deal with it as a discipline issue. And I would maybe even tell them, hey, I need you to stand in the hall. I'll come talk to you in a minute. And so you can finish working with the class. They see that behavior is not going to be tolerated, and then you can go deal with it when you get a chance. So let's review. We've developed the right demeanor. We've conducted our classroom shakeup. After we do the shakeup, we teach the new procedure, we practice, we correct, we redo. Now what? Well, now we have to, from now on, we forced a reset so that now we can deal with problems while they are small. I will tell you, this was my hugest mistake, especially my first year of teaching, is that I let a lot of little things go. I figured, what does it matter if a couple students are talking? It's just a little bit. Or what does it matter if they have their head down? Or what does it matter if they kind of run a little bit? It's not a big deal. But the sad fact is that little problems don't stay little. If you don't deal with the little problems, they escalate into bigger and bigger issues. And that might be where you are right now in your classroom. So what we need to do is deal with problems while they're small. And that's why we did a classroom shakeup, so that we could force a reset. Because if you're anything like my classroom was, I would come in and there would be like 50 little problems. There was no way I could deal with all of them. But by doing this classroom shakeup, you're forcing a little bit of a reset so that hopefully the next, as you were having the students come in, the majority of the class probably did it right and you could deal with those few little problems. But tomorrow, you're going to have to be super vigilant. And when all the students come in again, you need to deal with every little problem and be hyper vigilant for a week or two until they really get it down. And you can use this classroom shakeup in other parts of your class as well to force resets in those other areas. And after you do a reset, be extra vigilant and deal with problems while they're small by correcting, redoing, using your warning system if you need to, so that students learn and they get used to the correct way of doing things. So this, after the shakeup is the time to do this. Start of school is also an amazing time to do this. So next year when school starts, deal with everything while it's small on day 1, day 2, day 3 of school, and you will be amazed how the issues stay so much smaller than if you let the little things go. Now, you might be wondering, what do I mean by deal with the problem? Well, deal with doesn't necessarily have to mean much of anything. You don't have to necessarily give a consequence unless that's what's appropriate in your discipline plan. But deal with can simply mean saying something. Olivia, please sit up. Or like in our example, having students correct and redo. Or using your warning system that you established. So deal with does not just this was one of my biggest mistakes. I thought deal with had to mean a consequence. It doesn't. Deal with can mean a variety of things. It just means that the issue is addressed. It's not ignored. So don't ignore, address the issue. And if you're lacking confidence in this area, practice if you need to in front of a mirror. Practice. What am I going to say if a student blurts something out? What am I going to say if a student does this or that, especially related to your shakeup, so that you're confident and you know what you're going to do. Next, you just need to stay consistent. Do your best to stay with it, to continue to deal with problems while they're small, to continue to correct and redo, and hold students to that high standard. And here's the biggest key with being consistent. Realize that you are going to mess up. There are going to be times when you forget to deal with something or you just fail to deal with it. You shouldn't, but you do. And the key is to determine to catch the very next one. Don't let it snowball. If you miss one and you get right back and you deal with the very next thing, it's just a blip on the radar. But if you miss one thing and then you say, oh, I didn't deal with that one, so I can't deal with this one, and then I can't deal with this, it's going to snowball and get out of control. So stay consistent. If you miss something, deal with the very next one. I hope these ideas have been helpful for you. I'm so excited to hear you execute your plan and come back and tell us how it went. In the meantime, though, what I want you to do is share in the comments what is your biggest takeaway from this lesson. What's the thing you most want to remember? And then go conduct your classroom shakeout and execute that plan. Be sure, though, that you come back tomorrow for day 3. You do not want to miss it because if you plan and then execute your plan, you are definitely going to take some big steps towards regaining control. But there is a very important piece of the puzzle that you don't want to miss, because if you miss this, your best efforts are only going to go so far, and at some point, everything is going to come crashing down. So don't miss day 3. I'll tell you what that is tomorrow. See you there.